that a legislative proposal does not contain any money bill aspects, the proposal is committed to the relevant departmental committee for pre-publication scrutiny and relevant sectoral input. Ordinarily, the recommendation of the relevant committee is key in guiding the Speaker to make a determination on whether to publish a legislative proposal or not. Honourable members, statistics before me indicate that a total of 313 individual members' legislative proposals have so far been proposed in the 12th Parliament. Of these, 91 are currently at the drafting stage, while 9 have been submitted to the Parliamentary Budget Office for money bill certification. 42 legislative proposals, which were determined to contain money bill aspects, are currently pending before the Budget and Appropriations Committee. On the other hand, 69 legislative proposals are being considered before the relevant departmental committees after either being considered by the Budget and Appropriations Committee and recommended to be proceeded with, or after having been determined as not containing any money bill aspects. In the course of considering the legislative proposals, the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the various departmental committees have recommended that 31 proposals should either not be proceeded with or published on the considered advice of the National Treasury or on account of relevant sectoral concerns. Finally, 63 legislative proposals have so far either been recommended for publication, approved for publication by my office, or published as bills that are now at different stages of consideration by the House. 8 of the proposals initially approved for processing have been withdrawn by the members concerned. As you will note from the above statistics, honourable members, a total of 111 legislative proposals are before the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the various departmental committees. This represents nearly half of all the personal legislative output of individual members to date. Just for your information, honourable members, of the proposals that have been published into bills, 1 has been assented to, 2 have been passed and are undergoing preparation for assent, 4 have been concluded by the House and are currently undergoing consideration in the Senate, 5 are awaiting Committee of the Whole House consideration, 45 are awaiting or undergoing second reading, 4 have been lost, and 2 have been withdrawn by the members who introduced them. There has been some progress in consideration of members' bills, and the House Business Committee has resolved to continue prioritizing them in coming weeks, and have gone as far as moving a motion to allow that Thursday morning sittings during this part of the session be reserved specifically for individual members' business to clear the backlog. Honourable members, on the first issue, related to whether the House has authority in respect to the processing of a legislative proposal, members will recall that before the 10th Parliament, members wishing to introduce a bill and to seek leave of the House by way of a motion. The House will then take a vote on whether the proposal was to be proceeded with or not. This procedure was done away with during the review of the standing orders in 2008. A new procedure was then introduced that gave the Speaker the power to determine whether a legislative proposal was to be proceeded with or not based on the recommendation of the clerk as to conformity to format and style. However, after several years in operation, and with the new constitution coming into force, a need arose for the establishment of a mechanism to sieve legislative work before its consideration by the plenary of the House. This was especially with regard to the confirmation of the money bill aspects of a legislative proposal, its constitutionality or otherwise, and its conformity with the drafting format and style of the House to ensure consistency in legislative output. The standing orders were accordingly reviewed, and during the 11th Parliament, the current system of pre-publication scrutiny that I have described above was introduced. Members, let me allow the members to come in. Members at the door, please make your way in. Make your way into the House so that we can proceed. Honourable members, allow me now to respond to the second and third matters raised by the Honourable Oluoch. To begin with, on whether the committee's decision on a legislative proposal upon pre-publication scrutiny is final, I wish to categorically state that it is not. Why do I say so? First, where the attention of the House Business Committee is drawn to the fact that the Budget and Appropriations Committee has recommended that a significant number of legislative proposals to be proceeded with, and the proposals remain stuck in departmental committees, the House Business Committee has always risen to the occasion and sought the resolution of the House to cause the proposal to be published. Members may recall that on the 21st of February 2019, the then leader of the majority party, the Honorable Eden Duale, moved a motion on behalf of the House Business Committee that sought the resolution of the House for the publication of 30 legislative proposals whose consideration was inordinately delayed by various departmental committees. The motion was approved and saw the publication of the bills, some of which have since been passed by the House. Therefore, the recommendation of departmental committees in respect of a legislative proposal is not final or binding as to the fate of a proposal. Secondly, honourable members, a cursory reading of Standing Order 114 readily reveals the discretion that the House has granted the Speaker with regard to any recommendation made by a departmental committee on a legislative proposal. The Speaker has the discretion to agree or not to agree with the recommendations of the relevant committee. Indeed, on a few occasions, and for considered reasons, I have disagreed with the decision of a departmental committee on a legislative proposal. As an example, in the 11th Parliament, the then member for Baringo County, the Honourable Grace Kiptui, sought to amend the Basic Education Act of 2013 to provide for the distribution of free sanitary towels to every girl child enrolled in a public basic education institution upon attaining puberty. Whereas the Budget and Appropriations Committee recommended that the legislative proposal be proceeded with, the Departmental Committee on Education, Research and Technology recommended that it should not be published. This was ostensibly on the basis that the government had already established a sanitary towels program in the country. Having considered the matter, I directed the publication of the proposal against the recommendation of the committee. At the time, my determination was informed by, among other things, the fact that the proposal did not offend the Constitution or contradict or duplicate any existing law. It was also my view then, which I still hold, that rejecting a proposal by a member without relevant and weighty reasons amounts to curtailing the member's constitutional right to legislate. The recommendation by the Departmental Committee on Education, Research and Technology to shelve the proposal on account of the government's program would only leave the matter at the mercies of government policy, which is unpredictable and be contaminated at any time as opposed to legislation. I felt that the committee was becoming a roadblock as they had raised no constitutional or legal issues, but rather were making administrative arguments for the administration. Similarly, during the 11th Parliament, it is on record that my determination on the fate of the Persons with Disabilities Amendment Bill 2013, sponsored by the then member for Nyandarua County, Honorable Wanjiku Muhia, the National Employment Authority Bill of 2015, sponsored by the then nominated member, Honorable Johnson Sakaja, the Banking Amendment Bill, sponsored by the member for Kiambu Constituency, Honorable Jude Jomo, and the Engineering Technologists and Technicians Bill, sponsored by the then member for Bomet County, Honorable Cecilia Ngetich, countermanded the recommendations made by the respective departmental committees. All these proposals were subsequently passed by the House and assented to into law. Honorable members, the practice world over is that whenever speakers are faced with a situation where they have to decide between a policy and a proposed legislation, they tend to rule in favor of legislation since it asserts the authority of the House. The above two scenarios, exemplified by the actions of the House Business Committee and the Speaker, conform to a long-held parliamentary tradition that whenever the Speaker is confronted by a choice between the House, a committee, or an individual member of the House, he or she always chooses the House for resolution. Honourable members, and hasten to caution that the discretion that the House has lent to the Speaker ought not to be construed by members as a convenient avenue of circumventing the carefully woven fabric of the committee system under the standing orders. Majority of the work of the House is conducted in committees, which have at their disposal relevant sectoral experience and expertise in their respective mandates and the assistance of competent technical officers, both from within and outside Parliament. Accordingly, a decision to countermand the recommendation of a committee of the House should be viewed as an exception and not a rule. Honourable members, consequently, in the exceptional circumstance where a member is genuinely aggrieved by the recommendation of a committee or the manner in which his or her legislative output is being processed by a committee, two secondary avenues for seeking direction or redress exist. First, and with regard to inordinate delays in the consideration or processing of a legislative proposal, the member may move the House Business Committee to seek a resolution of the House for the advancement of its legislative mandate. Secondly, where a committee has made an advance recommendation with regard to a legislative proposal, the member may provide the Speaker with relevant information to inform his or her consideration of the report and recommendation of the departmental committee. From the foregoing, you will note that the discretion granted the Speaker by Standing Order 114 is only with regard to the recommendation made by the departmental committees. Honourable members, as you are aware, the pre-publication scrutiny in our current legislative process has two steps, namely money bill certification and consideration by the relevant committee. If a legislative proposal is determined to have money bill aspects contemplated under Article 114 of the Constitution, it is forwarded to the Budget and Appropriations Committee for consideration and recommendation in consultation with the views of the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury. On the other hand, if the proposal is determined not to have any money bill aspects, the standing orders require the Speaker to forward it to the relevant committee for initial consideration. In considering a legislative proposal, the relevant committee checks on such issues as to constitutionality, existing provisions in law, or conflict with other existing law without proposed amendment or repeal. As to whether the process adds value, I wish to state as follows. Firstly, the Article 114 consideration is a constitutional requirement. It is not a procedure or step that the House has a decision over, as the House may proceed, and I quote, only in accordance with the recommendation of the Budget and Appropriations Committee after taking into account the views of the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury, close quotes. There is therefore no question as to whether the process is necessary or not. Indeed, Article 114 of the Constitution expressly requires the House to only proceed with the consideration of a money bill in line with the recommendation of a committee mandated with that task and after taking into account the views of the Cabinet Secretary responsible for finance. This House has in its standing orders mandated the Budget and Appropriations Committee as the relevant committee contemplated in the Constitution. Consequently, the Speaker has no discretion with regard to the recommendation made by the Budget and Appropriations Committee on a proposal that has been certified to contain money bill aspects. Honourable members, on the third question of whether a member can reintroduce a legislative proposal after a negative decision by the relevant committee, I note that the standing orders do not prohibit the reintroduction of a legislative proposal in the same or an enriched form. The U.S. Congress publishes approximately 2,000 bills every year. The practice is conscious of the fact that not all the published bills will be considered by the House or be concluded, if at all, considered. However, it is the duty of the processes of any legislature to not only facilitate members to undertake their duty, but also to facilitate the display of the performance of that very duty. Undeniably, not all bills that are published become law. Some bills are published to cause an action, resolve issues of concern to the people, or to elicit national debate on the subject. For instance, in the 9th Parliament, the then member for Konoin, the Honourable Dr. Julius Kones, sponsored the tea amendment bill with the intention of causing the executive to take certain actions in the tea sector. No sooner had the bill been published than the executive not only went ahead to take administrative actions to address concerns in the tea sector at the time, but also introduced a concurrent bill. No wonder, no sooner had Senator Cheruiyot published his tea bill and action started in both houses, then the executive is now pushing changes in the tea sector. Similarly, during the 11th Parliament, the then member for Mukurweini, the Honorable Kabando, proposed an amendment to the Central Bank Act to require the Central Bank to put in place mechanisms to enable the public to participate in government securities through electronic means and in lower minimum denominations. Soon thereafter, the Central Bank instituted measures that saw the reduction of the minimum investment in government securities from Kenya shillings 50,000 to Kenya shillings 3,000, and the introduction of phone-based trading in these securities. Therefore, I'm convinced that we should make our processes less difficult and ensure that they are facilitative to members. As Speaker, I therefore will not hesitate to disagree with a committee where a committee is being unnecessarily obstructive. Honourable members, whereas a member has raised valid questions that have constitutional grounding, particularly in respect to Articles 94 and 95 of the Constitution on the role of Parliament, the processes in question are ingrained in the standing orders and derive from the constitutional requirements. At present, no catastrophic or terminal failure has revealed itself with regard to the functioning of the committee system and the pre-publication scrutiny procedure established by the House to see if the legislative works are submitted for consideration by the plenary. Despite appreciating that the structure of the committee system is firm, I am constrained to admit that the statistics of the legislative work of individual members pending before the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the various departmental committees are worrying, and if left unchecked, may indeed disillusion the affected members and discourage others from exercising their constitutional mandate to legislate. It is therefore my finding that some departmental committees are misapplying the provisions of Standing Order 114 on pre-publication scrutiny. The intention was not for the departmental committees to curtail the legislative authority of the House or to stop members from publishing bills, but rather to facilitate members in this endeavor. I'm indeed concerned by the high number of legislative proposals that have been lying in departmental committees for far too long. Some of them have been before committees for over a year. And for instance, on the 17th of October 2019, the committee deferred making a decision on a legislative proposal by the Honorable George Kariuki MP titled the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2019. That decision is still pending 1 year down the line. This is a blatant abuse of the parliamentary process and should not be allowed. In any case, should the committee find difficulty in getting views of the Cabinet Secretary as required, the same should be reported to allow the House to make an appropriate resolution in the circumstances. Honourable members, to ensure the processing of these proposals one way or other and to safeguard the authority of the House, I hereby direct as follows. 1, that all departmental committees have until 3rd of November 2020 to consider all legislative proposals before them whose 21 days have expired and make their recommendations known to me on or before 3rd of November 2020. 2, that failure to comply with the above mentioned directive will leave the House Business Committee with no other option but to follow the precedent set in 2019 by immediately seeking an order of the House for authorization to have the bills published as legislative proposals. 3, that the Procedure and House Rules Committee relooks at Standing Order 114 and the related provisions of the standing orders in respect of the value, especially with regards to the role of departmental committees in pre-publication scrutiny. This is bearing in mind that once published, the same bills are still committed back to the same committees for consideration, including conducting public participation. In making its recommendations, the Procedure and House Rules Committee should consider providing an appellate mechanism during the pre-publication stage and before a recommendation is made to the Speaker. And finally, that at least once a week, the clerk does publish on the parliamentary website the list of members' legislative proposals which have been drafted and are awaiting the money bill recommendation or are undergoing pre-publication scrutiny in committees, and brief the House Business Committee on regular basis on the same. I thank you, my members.
Order number 3, messages.
Sorry, honourable members. There's heavy business that you are going to recess today. Let's just deal with the business. Honourable members, the member who is loitering. Honourable members, pursuant to the provision of Standing Order number 41, I wish to report the House that I have received 2 messages from the Senate regarding its passage of the County Outdoor Advertising Control Bill, Senate Bill number 19 of 2018, and the Sectional Properties Bill, National Assembly Bill number 23 of 2019. The first message conveys that, and I quote, on Thursday, 8th October 2020, the Senate considered and approved the National Assembly amendments to the County Outdoor Advertising Control Bill, Senate Bill number 19 of 2018. Close the quotes. Honourable members, you will recall that on Thursday, 25th of June 2020, this House considered and passed the said bill with amendments to clauses 2, 3, 4, 10, 15, and 21. The Senate's approval of the National Assembly's amendments now concludes the bicameral consideration of the bill in accordance with the provisions of Article 112, Clause 2 of the Constitution. The second message relates to the passage of the Sectional Properties Bill, National Assembly Bill number 23 of 2019. The message conveys that, quote, on Thursday, 8th October 2020, the Senate considered and passed the Sectional Properties Bill, National Assembly Bill number 23 of 2019 with amendments to Clause 2, and now seeks the concurrence of the National Assembly. In this regard, I direct the clerk to circulate the Senate amendments to all members pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 145. Further, the Senate amendments to the bill are hereby committed to the Departmental Committee on Lands for consideration. The committee is expected to submit its report before the amendments are considered by the House. For the avoidance of doubt, the House is reminded that the National Assembly will only consider the amendments made by the Senate to the bill and not any other part of the bill. I thank you, members.
Order number 4, petitions.
The Honorable Mukwana Hamala.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I have a petition regarding the imminent closure of Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, Kakamega campus. Honorable Speaker, I, the undersigned, on behalf of the concerned students of Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, Kakamega campus, draw the attention of the House to the following. Number 1, that the university education is one of the critical foundations for building the necessary technical, human resource capabilities needed to drive the country towards achieving the Kenya Vision 2030, as well as establishing the country as a middle-class economy. Mr. Speaker, that in furtherance of the above vision, the government embarked on the ambitious program of expanding places for university education by accrediting more universities and establishing new campuses. 3, that in 2011, Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology opened up a constituent campus in Kakamega town at Ambwere Fraha building with an initial enrollment of 17 students, which has grown to more than 800 undergraduate and postgraduate students currently pursuing different courses. Number 4, that from 2017, the political leadership in Kakamega and the county government of Kakamega initiated plans to secure land to relocate the campus from the rented premises to its own premises and put up appropriate structures in support of permanent establishment of the campus. Number 5, that the county government of Kakamega has already secured for the campus approximately 3.5 acres of land with lecture rooms in Lurambi constituency and another 50 acres in Lukuyani constituency. Number 6, Mr. Speaker, that the process of fully securing land for the campus began in 2017 and the final approvals were forwarded to the National Land Commission in 2019 for allocation of allotment letters and issuance of title deeds to the campus. Number 7, that in a disappointing turn of events, on 15th June 2020, Mr. Speaker, the management of JKUAT Kakamega campus issued a short notice for permanent closure of the Kakamega campus by 30th of August 2020 and directed students to either opt for online classes or relocate to other JKUAT campuses in Kitale, Kisii, and Nakuru. Number 8, Honorable Speaker, that the abrupt closure of the campus is not in the best interest of the students, given that it will adversely disrupt learning programs for more than 800 students, some of whom had just one semester remaining to complete their undergraduate studies, and occasion loss of livelihoods for staff and service providers in Kakamega town who are dependent on the university population. Number 9, that the imminent closure has failed to take cognizance of the efforts made by the county government of Kakamega to avail the land in Lurambi and Lukuyani constituencies for the permanent establishment of the campus, hence likely to erode the gains made in expanding the opportunities for accessing university education. Number 10, that the inconveniences and challenges associated with the imminent closure will potentially shatter the dreams of many undergraduate and postgraduate students at the affected campus, because some of them may not be able to fund the relocation or opt for online classes, given that technology courses cannot be effectively delivered online. Number 11, Mr. Speaker, that efforts by the local leadership and the student leadership to have the relocation halted have not yielded fruit. Number 12, that the matters in respect of which this petition is made are not pending before a court of law, constitutional or legal body. Therefore, your humble petitioners pray that the National Assembly, through the Department Committee on Education and Research, inquires into the issues raised in the petition with a view to establishing the circumstances leading to the abrupt issuance of a memo for closure of Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology Kakamega campus, despite the process made in providing land for permanent establishment of the facility at its own premises. B, recommends to the Minister of Education and the Commission for University Education to reverse the decision to close the campus so as to secure the interest of students whose studies are at the risk of being shattered by the abrupt closure. And finally, C, make any recommendation it deems necessary in addressing the plight of the petitioners. And your petitioners will ever pray. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Paddy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to contribute to this petition, but mostly now to try to have some facts clarified. Mr. Speaker, I think Honorable Kamala implied that there is a campus in Kakamega which is about to be reallocated, but the way he was pronouncing it, we got concerned because he was talking of campus being relocated from Kakamega, and I think that has a very serious implication because that would be scary if campus were being relocated from Kakamega. So, Mr. Speaker, I think to just set the record straight, it is the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology campus, which is situated in Kakamega town, that is being reallocated. And so the petitioners are praying that that should be looked into. And I support that fully, Mr. Speaker, because really, once these campuses have helped to grow most of these our towns. In fact, without these high learning institutions in Kakamega town, for example, Bondo, I can just mention the towns that I'm familiar with, they would just be dead towns. So any attempt to relocate campuses is in a sense killing the economy of those regions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Iringo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me give my brief comment on this petition by my friend Bishop Amala. And as Honorable Bandi has put it, Mr. Speaker, I thought he was talking of campus, but I really took my time to get to know what he was talking about. But that is the dialect, Mr. Speaker, and let us appreciate that we have different dialects. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I also concur with the petitioner because once an institution has been established in a certain place and you decide to relocate it to somewhere else, you really inconvenience people because people have already invested in that area for hostels and other facilities and amenities for the students. And once you relocate, you just kill that particular area or market. And at the end of the day, some people could have even invested using loans and other monies. And more so, they end up not paying loans or failing to pay loans, and their lands auctioned. And also students will be inconvenienced, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Emuhaya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also had to fight with minority leader a lot so that the petition is not interrupted with, because I was also concerned that is a petition that is affecting Kakamega town, and the relocation of campuses has been rampant by the leadership of the main universities, because we also lost the Bunangwe campus and affected the economy of that area very much. So again, loss of this particular one, JKUAD, will again affect the area a lot. And I want to support the petition, which is timely. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Member for Marakwet East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I beg to differ with my colleagues. Mr. Speaker, the principal objective of establishing a university is to get a people who are skilled in their respective areas of education and to get people who are specialized. Mr. Speaker, with this opening of so many campuses across the country, Mr. Speaker, it has really brought down education. I'm an alumni of Jomo Kenyatta University, Mr. Speaker, and it is very embarrassing that a university which was ranked of the best in Africa is now the lowest because of so many small campuses, one in Matare, another one somewhere there, that corner. Mr. Speaker, I think we need to stick to the objective principle of establishing university and have a quality graduates, but not to boost the economies in centers or in shopping centers, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Community.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do support the petition. Mr. Speaker, as I support the petition, we need to know that a university, when it starts its business, if programs cannot sustain itself, there's no way it can continue, Mr. Speaker, to exist. It is indeed important that these Module 2 programs, they are priced higher. So maybe it's the highest time we should request or allocate more money to Higher Education Loans Board. Because it's not just happening in Kakamega alone. It has also happened in Kitale. And it's true, when a university is in a town, Mr. Speaker, the economic activities normally they are increased, even the GDP of that area increases. In terms of other extracurricular activities, there's a market provided for by those students because they have to eat, Mr. Speaker, availability in terms of accommodation. But if the numbers, they cannot break even, there's no way you can force a university to be there. Maybe it's a responsibility for the local leadership also to invest and maybe sponsor more students to go to that particular campus, Mr. Speaker, for purposes of break even. Otherwise, it cannot work, Mr. Speaker. And that is the logic. It is a business venture. It is not a humanitarian, Mr. Speaker. And of course, some time back, Mr. Speaker, we are aware there is a motion which passed in the Senate, which had been sponsored by Senator Halwale, that with devolution, we must have universities in every county, because we know the much the students contribute, how much a university contributes in the economy of that local area. It's like an industry. So it's a responsibility also for the local leadership, Mr. Speaker, to be able to know how do we sustain this university? Because without sustainability, it cannot work, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
I hope you didn't say that rental income and other extracurricular activities. I see. Which ones? Member for Endebess.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to support the petition by Honorable Kamala, but I would want that when they are looking, the committee is looking into this petition, I think we need to come up with standards for which universities must be able to establish before starting a campus, because once you start a campus and people register for the various courses, and then you close it down, it is both economic catastrophe, because these people have paid for those studies. You are going to interrupt their studies because people go and settle within those areas so that they can access that education. Honorable Speaker, in Kitale we had Mount Kenya University starting several campuses within there, and after which, when they closed, even those who had registered from local who wanted to advance their education, it became a problem, because what happens with your program? How do you transfer that program to another part of the university or where they have moved into? I think these are things that should be able to be looked into. Otherwise, the petition is in good faith. Thank you.
Member for Adienda.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to support this petition. Mr. Speaker, in supporting it, we should take cognizance that there appears to be a conscious decision by the government, particularly the Ministry of Education, to discourage opening of campuses and towards closure of campuses and re-centralizing them. Mr. Speaker, that policy needs to be reconsidered. First of all, the Constitution of Kenya requires decentralization of services and access to services all over this country. The idea of opening campuses, therefore, is in keeping with the spirit and letter of the Constitution. Their closure directly negates that requirement of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, secondly, we are acutely aware that we live in a country where for almost 4 decades we were guided by sessional paper number 4, I think, of 1965, number 10 of 1965, which appeared to concentrate resources in areas that were deemed to be productive. And those resources included educational facilities. And the result is there are many parts of this country which therefore did not benefit from having a university. The closest they come is having those campuses. When you close them, you are really going back to that sessional paper that had done great injustice for many decades. Mr. Speaker, It is also true that in many instances, the decision to set up the main universities followed the leadership of this country. Depending on the leadership, then you find the universities are established. Other than the University of Nairobi and the Kenyatta University, most other universities that were established later followed that pattern. The only way to defeat that pattern is to allow other areas to have satellite campuses. Mr. Speaker, I think that the only question we should ask is that campus, does it have proper facilities? Are we maintaining proper quality? Are we maintaining standards? If we are, then there's no reason to close them. But in the same vein, Mr. Speaker, while I'm supporting the petition, I realize that the original campus may not have been appropriately placed. It appears to have been placed on the 4th floor of some building, which no doubt had neighbors like butcheries and salons and such like things. That is not appropriate for a learning environment. But having noted, though, that the petitioner notes that the county government went ahead and secured 50 acres, that is the kind of situation you want for a campus. Mr. Speaker, I support the petition.
Well, honourable members, you know, the petition is just a few comments. I'll have one more. Member for Bomachoge, Borabu.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I also want to join the honourable members in supporting this petition on the grounds of accountability. Honourable Speaker, it is time that we stood on our grounds and questioned the leadership of the universities on some of these things they do. In the 90s, early 2010, universities went on massive expansion, and they did it without even getting the approval from the right institutions. Now the universities have run dry of the students from the respective catchments, and they are doing things without taking into account the damages that those actions are having on the community. Honourable Speaker, I think I want to say that it is high time we hold the universities accountable for the things they do, and I support.
The petition is referred to the Departmental Committee on Education and Research to deal with in accordance with the standing orders. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Leader of Majority.
Honourable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Thursday, October 15th, 2020, in the afternoon sitting. Legal notice number 188 of 2020 relating to the value-added tax amendment invoice regulations 2020 from the National Treasury. To report on study on perceptions and experiences of corruption in the public service in Kenya from the National Crime Research Center. Number 3, the report of the Auditor General and financial statements for the Industrial and Commercial Development Corporation for the year ended 30th of June 2018 and certificates therein. Number 4, the reports of the Auditor General and the financial statements in respect to the following institutions for the year ended 30th of June 2019 and the certificates therein. A, the Judicial Service Commission. B, the State Law Office and Department of Justice. C, the State Law Office and Department of Justice Official Receiver. D, the State Department for Fisheries, Aquaculture, and the Blue Economy. And E, the State Department for Industrialization. F, the State Department for Cooperatives. G, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. And lastly, the Industrial and Commercial Development Corporation. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Good. The Chairman, Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs.
I beg, sir, to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Thursday, October 15th, 2020, afternoon sitting. Reports of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs in the research 1, its consideration of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 24 of 2019, and here it should be distinguished from number 3, which is on the order paper. Number 2 is consideration of the reference of the referendum number 2 bill, National Assembly Bill number 14 of 2020. Number 3 is consideration of the statute law miscellaneous amendments bill, National Assembly Bill number 15 of 2020. Thank you.
Number 2 is that referendum bill number 2. Is it National Assembly Bill number 14 or number 15?
The referendum is number 2 bill, National Assembly.
Bill number
14.
14.
Yes.
Not 15.
Not 15.
Very well.
Thank you.
Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Lands.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, October 15, 2020, afternoon sitting. Report of the Departmental Committee on Lands on its consideration of a public petition by the residents of Vota, Moore Ward in Machakos Town constituency regarding the obstruction of tarmacking of Konza Katumani Road. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
Before I commence that, let me, so that we proceed in a neat way. The reason why I was asking the Honorable Muturi Kigano about whether his is number 14 or number 15 is because there was another report which was tabled by the committee responsible for implementation, Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee, on the same subject, referendum. I think, in fairness to the House, it will be decent, much neater, if I think the two committees could, during the recess period, have a sitting so that you can see whether there's a way you can be able to harmonize the two, because it's on the same subject. Honorable Kigano.
This to the attention of the leader of majority sometime informally, but I guess what could happen when on the committee stage, perhaps then they can be corrupt. You can corrupt one and then the committee. I don't know. I'm not familiar with this.
Would it be neater if, first of all, before because when the bill comes for second reading, it will be general debate. But I think the House in plenary would benefit a great deal if there has been some meeting between the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee and the CIOC, at which you could begin broaching some, general approaches to, because the subject is the same, so that then you can jointly give us something, some way forward, so that even as members debate, there isn't confusion.
I think I'll approach my colleague.
You get in touch with the office of the clerk.
Yes.
Get in touch with the office of the clerk. Honorable Kioni should also, if you can look for him, so that you can agree on some dates when your two committees can meet. I'm sure it should not be difficult to come up with some broad agreements. Yeah.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
First question, member for Westlands, Honorable Anyonyi Timothy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask question number 253 of 2020. Could the Cabinet Secretary explain why the construction of a footbridge at Kidokoro village along the Nairobi North Bypass is yet to be undertaken despite the ministry having given an undertaking to do so? Question number 2, could the Cabinet Secretary further explain when will the pedestrian footbridge be constructed along Wayaki Way on Nairobi Nakuru Road near the IEBC Place, ABDK Red Hill Road Junction to facilitate easy access of ABDK offices by persons with disabilities? Number 3, could the Cabinet Secretary explain why the ministry does not incorporate social inclusion as part of the road designs during the construction of major road projects, and whether there are plans, if are any plans to do so? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing. Next question, member for Kadiani.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask question number 256 of this year to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of National Government. 1, is the Cabinet Secretary aware that one Peter Nzioki Munyao of ID number 0752089, who is the village headman for Makumbini village in Idhaani sublocation of Kaiwa location of Kadiani constituency, broke his leg while enforcing the curfew imposed during this COVID-19 pandemic period? And 2, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the measures the ministry will take to assist the officer to settle the expenses and the medical bills incurred as a result of the incident, considering that this officer got injured while on duty?
To be replied before the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security. Next question by the member for Mwingi West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask question 270 of 2020 to Cabinet Secretary for Education. Question number 1. Could the Cabinet Secretary explain when the ministry intends to pay one Rebecca Kiluge of ID number 040223 compensation of Kenya shillings 3.3,885,800, which was awarded by the Magistrates Court in Mwingi, filed C4 case number 188 of 2008. 2. What has caused the delay in effecting the compensation which was awarded following the death of one Lucas Motuku Kilungi, who passed on following a road accident involving a Minister of Education motor vehicle registration number GKA945G? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question to be replied before the Departmental Committee on Education and Research. Next question by the member for Meru County.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. My question 287 of 2020 to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, Coordination of National Government. 1. Could the Cabinet Secretary provide a list of all gender-based violence cases that are recorded to have taken place in Meru County since January 2019? Number 2. What is the status of investigations into the said gender-based cases and progress of prosecution to the culprits, if any? Number 3. What measures has the ministry put in place to bring to an end the rising cases of gender-based violence in the country? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security. Next question by the member for Voi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to ask question number 289 to the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Transport, Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development. Part 1, when will the construction and refurbishment works on Voi Taveta 1-meter gauge railway line commence, considering that the government is keen on revamping railway transport in the country? But 2, could the Cabinet Secretary provide plans on refurbishment of the said railway line, considering its importance in boosting transport networks and improving the economy of the region? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Transport and Public Works and Housing. Last question, the member for Nyando.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask question number 296 of 2020, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Public Service, Gender and Youth Affairs. Question number 1. What specific policy plans does the ministry have for interns engaged by various state departments for a year and whose tenures are about to end? Question number 2 and the last one. In view of the service rendered to the public by the interns, could the government consider renewing the 2019-2020 internship engagement or absorbing the interns permanently in the public service? I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Response before the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. Honorable Washieli.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order number 44, 2C, I wish to request for a statement from the chairperson of the...
No, we are not yet there.
Is it?
What appeared before me was a question. What I know I approved was a question.
But I don't have a copy of that question, Honorable Speaker. Can I have a copy of that, please?
Which statement?
Is that statement?
There's a conclusion. What you brought here? Okay, proceed. Honorable Shirley.
Honorable Speaker, what I have is a statement, not a question.
Proceed.
Thank you. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order number 44-2C, I wish to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security on the recently cancelled religious meetings in various parts of the country. Honorable Speaker, Articles 36 and 37 of the Constitution guarantees freedom of association and assembly, which are all critical prerequisites to a thriving and a progressive democracy. While Article 32 safeguards freedom of religion, conscience, belief, and opinion. Honorable Speaker, officials of the National Police Service recently cancelled high-profile public religious functions in Mumias East and Matungu constituencies in contravention of questionable circumstances and that had no substantial basis and which involved the unnecessary, regrettable tear gassing of Christians. Honorable Speaker, I wish to go through this article because it's very important.
No. You can't read to us the law. Those who don't know the law, when they are here, they ought not to be here. Those are our rules.
Okay. Honorable Speaker, I wish to proceed then. It is on account of these public concerns that I seek for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security on the following. 1. What were the specific reasons that led to the cancellation of these meetings? 2. Is the Public Order Act that was cited by the officer commanding police station in both cases in cancelling the events still relevant and practical in the current constitutional dispensation? 3, what informed the unnecessary use of force, including the use of tear gassing against Christians who had gathered peacefully to undertake their religious duties? I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Is the chairman of the committee in the House? Honorable Koinange, Honorable Fatuma Gedi, yes. It looks like you don't have a card. Why can't you press the intervention button?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've had Honorable Washiali, and I commit we give a response after the recess. Thank you, Chair.
Very well. Responses? Responses. The second segment, the Chairman, Departmental Committee of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I wish to respond to request for statement by Honorable Kabinga Washira of Mwea, and request for statement regarding purchase of paddy rice grown in Mwea irrigation scheme by the government. Honorable Speaker, just to bring the House up to speed, the questions are: 1, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the plans the Ministry has put in place to ensure the smooth and sustainable implementation of the Presidential Directive of 1st February 2020 on the government buying paddy rice directly from farmers at a price of Kenya shillings 85. Honorable Speaker, as directed by His Excellency the President, the Society has been able to pay farmers for paddy delivered at Kenya shilling 85 Kenya shillings per kilo. Honorable Speaker, KNTC has to date procured a total of 3,909 tons, equivalent of 78,188 bags, worth 547,314,690 through Mwea Rice Growers Multipurpose Cooperative for white rice at Kenya shilling 140 per kilo as at 7th October 2020. Honorable Speaker, KNTC has equally paid 547,314,690 shillings as at 7th October 2020 to rice procured, and hence no outstanding dues as at 7th of October 2020 owed to the Society. Honorable Speaker, as at 7th October also 2020, KNTC had sold a total of 31,879 bags, equivalent to 1,594 tons of locally produced rice, worth Kenya shilling 201,695,890, at average unit price of 160 shillings per kilo of Mwea Pishori rice, and Kenya shilling 110 for Sindano rice, respectively. Honorable Speaker, the second question of the Honorable Member is: has the same Presidential Directive of February 2020 on establishment of a paddy rice revolving fund to facilitate the government in buying paddy rice from farmers been implemented? Honorable Speaker, through KNTC, the corporation was allocated Kenya shilling 660 million as a revolving fund to purchase the paddy rice. Question number 3, when is the Kenya National Trading Corporation going to pay Mwea rice mills for the paddy rice worth 200 million so that Mwea can pay farmers? Honorable Speaker, KNTC temporarily suspended farmers' procurement of rice from Mwea Rice Growers Multipurpose Cooperative due to huge non-moving stocks currently in KNTC. Warehouses of 3,335.5 tons which is equivalent to 66,708 bags worth Kenya shilling 533,664,000 Kenya shillings. The rice distribution operation have been adversely affected by the closure of all learning institutions, suspension of recruitments by the disciplined forces, and the scaling down of operations by other rice-consuming MDAs, thereby slowing down the commodities offtake rate. So there has been a lot of excess in warehouses. As the rice distribution operation resumes to the various MDAs in line with the projection given, KNTC will be in a position to resume the offtake of the Paddy rice at Mwea rice and consequently pay the farmers. Honorable Speaker, there is a very big challenge because the warehouses are full. The stock is worth almost 550 million shillings, and the next harvest is going to be in a couple of months. So what is going to happen to the farmers? The impact of COVID-19 pandemic, Honorable Speaker, owing to the fact that the rice distribution have been adversely affected by the closure of all learning institutions, suspension of recruitment of disciplined forces, and the scaling down of other rice-consuming MDAs, KNTC, in my view, has continued to discharge its role well. In addition, to further ensure sustainability of the project as a way of a strategy, KNTC has devised various strategies for business development to enable more rice sales, thereby curing the slow turnaround rate, which has inevitably led to temporarily suspension of further procurement of rice from Mwea rice growers multipurpose cooperatives. Honorable Speaker, some of the strategies KNTC is currently pursuing to expand rice clientele base include repacking and rebranding programs, plans to invest in aggressive marketing outreach, increasing KNTC market reach and coverage. Honorable Speaker, as a way of also helping the farmers, it is important to compel National Cereals and Produce Board, which now has assumed the role of SFR, to provide for strategic food reserve resources for rice. And also the government to speedily implement the Warehouse Receipt System Act to reduce, among other things, post-harvest loss, price fluctuation, and obviously it is an instrument where farmers can be able to draw some finances on the stocks. Honorable Speaker, I thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thanks.
Member for Mwea.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I want to say I agree with the report presented by the Chair, Departmental Committee on Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. However, Mr. Speaker, there are some facts on the ground that we need to look at. Number one, some 200 million worth rice is lying in Mwea multipurpose stores in Mwea, and they have no more capacity to take more. The above stock, Mr. Speaker, deliveries by farmers who have not been paid. And as I've always said, the returns to the farmers are so low that if they are not paid for what they deliver, they really suffer, Mr. Speaker. In this circumstance, MRGM is either going to be forced to take loan to pay the farmers who have delivered these rice, or farmers will go without payments. Again, something that will be detrimental to the farmers. Mr. Speaker, some businessmen and women outside Mwea have started taking advantage of this particular directive since it's not, because of that temporary stop over the purchase of rice from Mwea and Kano Plains, I believe. Mr. Speaker, these businessmen and women are coming all the way from Nairobi to come and buy rice in Mwea at cheap prices, exploiting the farmers who are unable to deliver their rice to MRGM, whose capacity is currently full, Mr. Speaker. This is likely to escalate. The problem is likely to be even much more in December, when we are expecting a bumper harvest. We have a lot of rice in the field that, again, farmers will not know where to take if KNTC does not come up with an immediate solution. And I appreciate the midterm and long-term plan by KNTC, but the immediate solution to the current problem, Mr. Speaker, needs to be looked at. Mr. Speaker, it's also worth noting that MRGM, or the society itself, has lost its traditional markets due to the high but favorable prices that the directive brought to the farmers, Mr. Speaker. So as we appreciate it, we also know that there are some markets that cannot sustain that particular price, and therefore they are not able to buy rice from MRGM, exacerbating the problem, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I said, MRGM will not be able to buy rice from farmers in December because of financial challenges as well as storage challenges, and this again will be a major problem to the people of both Mwea and Kano Plains, I believe, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this problem is not as small as probably the ministry could be looking at, because if nothing is done, both MRGM and its sister society called Lainisha are likely to close down. And if they close down, farmers will have nowhere to turn to in as far as financing is concerned, because Mwea rice farmers do not own titles, Mr. Speaker, and therefore they cannot be able to go to contemporary banks to get finances. They rely on these two societies. If they close down, it means the whole industry of rice farming in Mwea, which is the largest scheme in this country, will be affected. And I know there are people who will be very happy with that, because that will be an avenue for importing cheap and substandard rice in this country, Mr. Speaker. As you are aware, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Committee of Agriculture, I thank the Ministry of Agriculture. They have put in a lot of efforts to increase production of rice in the country, and this is going on, saving this country a lot of foreign exchange that would have gone towards importation of rice in this country, Mr. Speaker. If this particular directive is not fully implemented, it means that people will turn back to importation. People will exploit that gap, and a lot of foreign exchange will be lost. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, and under these circumstances, I am requesting that the government injects more money into the directive or to the initiative, so as to buy the rice that is in stock in Mwea. It can be held there by paid. We are lucky, Mr. Speaker, because rice Paddy, even if you kept it for 5 years, it will still not go bad. You can preserve rice as it is in Paddy form before you mill it, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, if the government can avail some funds, pay for that stock that is in Mwea, so that farmers can be paid and then work out on storage in December, this problem can be temporarily sorted out, Mr. Speaker. And so it is my humble prayer that the Committee of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives could find time during the recess period to visit both Mwea and KNTC before engaging the government, that is Treasury, so as to have a temporary solution to this problem, which is likely to be a major problem in Mwea, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Well, I thought that in the statement, the chairman did indicate that perhaps it is high time for that the strategic green reserve considers also purchasing rice, because I think it will go a long way in the same direction that you are suggesting. But I think we don't need to debate that. I think it's something I think the committee should pursue. Both your suggestion and what they have said, I think those are both lines should be pursued. Next, Chairman, Departmental Committee or Budget and Appropriations Committee.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. And I rise, Honorable Speaker, to give a status on the legislative proposals referred to the Budget and Appropriations Committee. Honorable Speaker, I'm happy that you have given a ruling, and it is as if we read your mind, and we had actually prepared a report from the Budget and Appropriations Committee. To be brief, Honorable Speaker, because we have had quite a number of legislative proposals coming to the committee, and members were sometimes complaining that the Budget and Appropriations Committee is the deathbed for legislative proposals. But I'm happy that we have been able to process quite a number of them. Honorable Speaker, Article 114 of the Constitution read together with the provisions of Standing Order 114.3 and 6 provide for the referral and processing of legislative proposal which are draft money bills. Specifically, Standing Order 114.3b says that, and I quote, where the Speaker is of the opinion that the legislative proposal is a draft money bill in terms of Article 114 of the Constitution, directs the legislative proposal be referred to the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and the proposal shall be proceeded with only in accordance with the recommendations of the committee after taking into account the views of the Cabinet Secretary responsible for finance. Honorable Speaker, it is worth noting and mentioning that the process of considering of draft money bill is meticulous in that the committee has to consider and evaluate technical briefs prepared by the Parliamentary Budget Office, which provides a detailed examination of the manner in which the proposal affects the current and the future budgets and may include implication on tax measures. Consider the views of the Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury, and hold discussions with the members sponsoring the proposal before making a decision. Honorable Speaker, at times the committee defer making its decision, awaiting to receive the comments from the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Treasury. While on other occasions, Honorable Speaker, members sponsoring the legislative proposal are not available, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, in this regard, since the commencement of the 12th Parliament, the Budget and Appropriations Committee has processed 114 legislative proposals, of which 117 have been processed from January 2018 to June 2020, while 25, Honorable Speaker, were processed between the months of July and September 2020. Honorable Speaker, between March and June 2020, no bills were considered because of course of the we were dealing with supplementary budget, supplementary estimates, division of revenue, and the annual estimates. You all recall, of course, we also had the difficult time of the lockdown infused by the COVID-19. Honorable Speaker, during the 2 months of July and September, we considered 25 bills. For ease of reference, Honorable Speaker, I have attached herein with annexures 1 to 5 of the status of all the legislative proposals that have been referred to the Budget and Appropriations Committee. Honorable Speaker, I would like to inform the House that when a legislative proposal is referred to the Budget and Appropriations Committee and it has financial implication, we must make decisions as to whether it should have a proposal proceed, how it will be, and how it will be financed, Already, the macro framework was decided in this House for the next 3 years, and thus the overall resource envelope is restricted. Thus, some legislative proposals must be rejected on account of lack of resources. After all, the legislature does not legislate in vain, And if a legislative proposal requires billions of shillings, then the proposal must await for when the resources will be available. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, let me also voice my concern over over-legislation. There are so many legislative proposals in the social sector and very little on economic and public finance. It may be important that a technical evaluation is done as to why this is happening. Honorable Speaker, I want to assure you and the entire membership of this House that the Budget and Appropriations Committee shall continue to be committed to dispense the draft money bills referred to it promptly so as to hasten and facilitate the legislative role of this House as enshrined in our Constitution. I therefore urge all stakeholders involved in the process of the processing of money bills to cooperate. Honorable Speaker, here attached are all the bills, and I would want to invite members to check the status of their bills. I only have 19 legislative proposals, which, Mr. Speaker, I want to commit to this House that by third, or by the time we resume from recess, we'll have processed all the legislative proposals that have been brought to us. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I submit.
But you must have a card. Is it a victim of Public Order Act?
No, Mr. Speaker, my card, I think it is a victim of my otherwise many good suits. So I put it in one of the suits and I cannot trace which one. But I'll take time over the short recess to go through the suits and see where my card is. But Honorable Speaker, I wanted to comment on the issue that has been raised by the Chair, Budget and Appropriations Committee, because indeed, the Budget and Appropriations Committee, as the Chair says, puts in a lot of work. And I can tell you, Honorable Chair, being Chair Emeritus in this committee, that a lot of the time spent by the committee outside of the budget cycle is in consideration of the legislative proposals. However, Honorable Speaker, you also appreciate that at the beginning of this session, I think in February, the House Business Committee under your leadership was kind enough, and I think it's actually last year, not even this year, to fast-track a number of private member bills or legislative proposals and actually exempted some from the rigorous process of going through the departmental committees. And that is why we have seen out of that effort by the House Business Committee a number of legislative proposals seeing the light of day and coming before the House for debate. And I appreciate that even my own bill on disaster management, the establishment of a disaster management authority, was concluded this morning. However, Honorable Speaker, at the beginning of this session also, I raised the issue of these bills lapsing, or a number of these legislative proposals lapsing, Honorable Speaker, and the Chair has mentioned that the committee has spent tremendous time and resources, public resources, because when they meet, it's public resources that we're expending, to consider over 140 legislative proposals. If we are not able to process these legislative proposals within the session of this Parliament this year, and we've only 4 weeks after we come back, if we are to continue not knowing how COVID will behave, it means we have about it's 2-3 sittings a week, so about 12 sittings at most. Therefore, we may see a number of these proposals lapsing at the end of this session, and I had sought your guidance, Honorable Speaker, and I think it's a matter, if I remember well, you referred to the House Business Committee to consider that we do exempt many of the members' legislative proposals from lapsing at the end of this session, so that the tremendous work that has been done by the Budget and Appropriations Committee, some by departmental committees, doesn't go to waste, Honorable Speaker. And I really want to beg that you still direct the Leader of Majority through the leadership in the House Business Committee to facilitate a situation where we will exempt, a procedural motion maybe, where we'll exempt many of these proposals. And I appreciate what the Chair is also saying. The Finance Committee, I think I had a PFM amendment bill that is still somewhere in the works, and maybe as the Chair's concern on economic bills touching on the economy and financial matters to be also given priority by the House Business Committee. maybe in the next half of this session as we come back from the short recess. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Yeah, that's a matter that I think will be considered because I have several members. But indeed, that is for that reason that I went into details to give the statistics of all the legislative proposals that have come up from individual members in this session. And maybe when we resume, we should consider a situation in which those that will be, because if it's a bill, if it will be going to the second year, if we go by the provisions of standing orders, they may be lapsing. Yet a lot of public expenditure has gone into their preparation, the committee sitting and considering them, the officers, the budget office. I think it is something that the House Business Committee will look into, so that what members have set out to do is not frustrated by a fraction of time. Leader majority.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 44-2A, I rise to give the following statement on behalf of the House Business Committee, which met on Wednesday, October the 7th, 2020, to prioritize business for consideration. Actually met on October 13th. My apologies. As members are aware, the House is scheduled to proceed on a short recess commencing tomorrow, basically at the end of today, in accordance with the calendar of the House as amended on Tuesday, June the 30th, 2020. In this regard, the House Business Committee has not scheduled any business for next week. However, upon resumption from recess on Tuesday, November the 3rd, 2020, at 2:30 p.m., the following business will be prioritized, which is the session of paper number 2 of 2019 on the National Policy on Gender and Development, session of paper number 3 of 2019 on the National Policy for Eradication of Female Genital Mutilation, the County Government's Amendment Bill, which is Senate Bill number 13 of 2018, the County Statutory Instruments Bill, Senate Bill number 21 of 2018, the Statutory Instruments Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 24 of 2018, and the Impeachment Procedure Bill, Senate Bill number 15 of 2018, and any other listed business today which will not be completed today will then be carried forward to that week. Honourable Speaker, currently there are no questions scheduled for reply, but the House will be updated on this when we resume the sittings. Honourable Speaker, the House Business Committee will reconvene on Wednesday, November the 4th, to schedule business for the week thereafter. I now wish to lay this statement on the table of the House. Thank you.
Yeah, next order.
Order number 8, procedural motion, consideration of certain business received during the month of October, November 2020 recess period.
Leader majority.
Honourable Speaker, I beg to move the following motion, that notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 41 and 42, relating to the conveying of messages from the Senate and from the President or the National Executive, and Standing Orders 120, 122, and 126, relating to the publication procedure upon publication and first reading of bills, this House orders that during the period of the short recess from October the 16th to November the 2nd, 2020, that A, upon receipt of any message from the Senate or upon receipt of any name of a person nominated for appointment to a state or public office from the President or any other office in the National Executive, the Speaker shall forthwith refer such message to the relevant committee for consideration without having to recall the House. Number B, should a bill be published during the period or a published bill becomes due for first reading during the period, the Speaker shall, upon lapse of the 7 days following the publication of the bill, forthwith refer such bills to the relevant committee for consideration pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 127, which deals with committal of bills to committees and public participation. And upon resumption of the House, cause the bill to be read a first time, and the second reading may be taken forthwith or on such other day as the House Business Committee may determine. And lastly, should the Speaker receive a message relating to the Senate's amendments to a bill originating in the National Assembly, the Speaker shall forthwith refer the schedule of the Senate amendments to the relevant committee for consideration pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 145 that relates to Senate amendments in bills originating in the National Assembly, and upon resumption of the House, report such fact to the House. Honourable members, this is a procedural motion that we do to just safeguard the processing of bills and messages and communication between the houses from the executive where we are away, so that we don't pile up business waiting for us to come. And really, it's something we do every time we're taking a break. We don't need to spend much time on it. And I want to beg to move and ask the leader of my minority party, Honourable Paddy, to second.
Honourable John Paddy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to second this procedural motion. Mr. Speaker, I think this is a new practice. This is a practice that we have developed, which I think is a very good practice. Previously, we used to have cases where if there is communication from the presidency or even from the Senate, then you would wait until we report back, or you have to convene a special sitting just to read for us the communication and refer it to the committee. So, Mr. Speaker, what we are doing is just to ask the House to allow the Speaker to refer these communications when they come to the committee to start dealing with them, so that when we report back, a report from the committee would be ready. Mr. Speaker, I second.
I propose the question. Is that notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 41, Orders number 41 and 42 relating to conveying of messages from the Senate and from the President or the National Executive, and Standing Orders 120, 122, and 126 relating to publication, procedure upon publication and first reading of bills, this House orders that during the period of the short recess between October 16th and November 2nd, 2020, A, upon receipt of any message from the Senate or upon receipt of any name of a person nominated for appointment to a state or public office from the President or any other office in the National Executive, the Speaker shall forthwith refer such message to the relevant committee for consideration without having to recall the House. B, should a bill be published during the period or a published bill becomes due for first reading during the period, Speaker shall, upon lapse of the 7 days following the publication of the bill, forthwith refer such bill to the relevant committee for consideration pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 127 dealing with committal of bills to committee and public participation, and upon resumption of the House, cause the bill to be read the first time, and the second reading may be taken forthwith or on such other day as the House Business Committee may determine. And C, should the Speaker receive a message from relating to the Senate's amendments to a bill originating in the National Assembly, the Speaker shall forthwith refer the schedule of the Senate amendments to the relevant committee for consideration pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 145 dealing with Senate amendments to bills originating in the National Assembly, and upon resumption of the House, report such fact to the House. I put the question, which is that the motion, the procedural motion contained in order number 8 in today's order paper be approved. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Order number 9, procedural motion, extension of time for consideration of a nominee for appointment as the Data Commissioner.
The Chairman, Departmental Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the motion, procedural motion, that pursuant to the provisions of Section 13 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, relating to the extension of period for the consideration of nominees for appointment to a public office, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the nominees submitted by His Excellency the President for appointment as a data commissioner by a further period of 14 days with effect from 28 October 2020. Honorable Speaker, in line with your communication dated 13 October 2020, you directed that the departmental committee undertakes approval hearing on the nominee within 14 days from 13th of October 2020. This implies that the approval hearing and debate by the House ought to be concluded by 27th of this month, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, in your communication, you also noted that the 14 days period within which the committee is expected to consider the nominee and table the report for debate to lapse during the short recess that we are proceeding from today. Honorable Speaker, the committee therefore seeks extension of time for the 14 days that we've requested, so that, Honorable Speaker, we can have time to do the approvals. As this House may be aware, Honorable Speaker, the Office of Data Protection Commissioner is the first office, and that the nominee, if approved by the House, will oversee the implementation of and be responsible for the enforcement of the Data Protection Act 2019 that was passed last year and basically enacted. And there were issues that would have that commissioner would have been appointed by now, but there was a court case, and the court case was concluded, Honorable Speaker. For the committee to undertake due diligence and to ensure that we have the right person for this job, we seek your indulgence of this House, the indulgence of this House, so as to undertake the vetting exercise and be able to prepare a comprehensive report on the nominee so that members can go through it. Honorable Speaker, already the committee and have already done an advert, and in tomorrow's newspaper, the advertisement for the public to submit any information on the nominee will be in the papers tomorrow. Honorable Speaker, there is something that has been going on in the media, both TV, radio, and also in the newspapers, that this particular person who will be nominated as a data commissioner will replace an employee of IEBC. I wanted to tell Kenyans and this House that this is a new office. It's a new office that will be under the Ministry of ICT and not within IEBC, because there's a lot of misconception outside there, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, with these remarks, I beg to move and request my colleague, my member, Honorable Osotsi, to second.
Honorable Osotsi. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion for the extension of time so that the committee can have, now that we are going on recess, enough time to interrogate the processes around the vetting of this nominee. But what is more important, Mr. Speaker, is that this process was temporarily delayed because of a court case on the issue of strict adherence to timelines. And therefore, this motion is very timely because it will help us navigate that area. But most importantly, again, Mr. Speaker, is that, as the chair has said, data protection is a new phenomenon. And we are going to have a completely new organization which is going to be headed by the data commissioner. And there is a lot of complexities around this new task. And therefore, it will be important for the committee to have enough time to interrogate this nominee for the purpose of determining suitability of this nominee. For those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I second.
Now, members, I propose the question. It is that pursuant to the provision of Section 13 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011 relating to extension of period for consideration of nominee for appointment to a public office, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the nominee submitted by His Excellency the President for appointment as a data commissioner by a further period of 14 days with effect from 28th of October 2020. Is it the desire of the House that I put the question? It's just for extension of time because the House is going to recess. And maybe perhaps I think I may need to announce when I finish this. I put the question that pursuant to the provision of Section 13 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011 relating to extension of period for consideration of nominee for appointment to a public office, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the nominee submitted by His Excellency the President for appointment as a data commissioner by a further period of 14 days with effect from 28th of October 2020. If as many as that opinion say aye. Aye. Those who are contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 10, procedural motion, extension of time for consideration of specified petitions.
Honorable Nyamai.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this House resolves to extend the period under which the committee is required to present its report to the petitioners under Standing Order 2272 by a further period of 60 days with effect from 13th of October 2020 of the following petitions. 1. Public petition on irregular transfer of ownership of Chenze Ranch presented by the Honorable Stephen Dalu Tayari. 2. Public petition on historical land injustices in Nandi County submitted by the Governor of Nandi County on behalf of the petitioners. 3. Public petition on historical land injustices in Chepchabas area in Bomet and Kericho counties presented by the Honorable Brighton Yegon, MP, on behalf of the petitioners. 4. Public petition on the usage of Gituaba land in Kinyona ward of Moranga County presented by the Honorable Sabina Chege, MP, on behalf of the petitioners. Honorable Speaker, this has been occasioned by the need to undertake exhaustive and conclusive consultations with relevant government agencies and their affected parties. Mr. Speaker, in respect to the first petition, the committee has already met as the petitioners, the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning, the National Land Commission also. The committee has also undertaken the field visits, so we are at the tail end. However, the committee is yet to meet a key stakeholder who emerged in this petition, namely the Rage Bridge Farm Limited that has delayed. Honorable Speaker, to do justice to the petition, the committee is scheduled to meet the above-mentioned stakeholder and other submissions from the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning. Mr. Speaker, with respect to the second and third petitions, the committee is yet to engage the concerned parties. Honorable Speaker, the House will appreciate that on one of these days, we received 3 petitions on the same day, and this is one of the reasons for the delays. Mr. Speaker, it is noteworthy to underscore the fact that the entry for the Parliamentary Committee, for the Departmental Committee on Lands is full, or we get a lot of petitions, and also during the COVID-19 period, we were not able to handle the petitions as expected, Mr. Speaker. This year, 2020, despite the fact that we were not working throughout due to COVID-19, we received 11 petitions, and we have already finished 5 of them, including one that I tabled today and 3 that I tabled in the previous sitting. Honorable Speaker, with respect to the 4th petition, the committee has already engaged the petitioners and also KTDA. And we also invited the National Land Commission in our last sitting. However, Honorable Speaker, the National Land Commission indicated that they were not ready for this petition. So you can see that the committee is making a lot of effort to make sure that we handle the issues, and National Land Commission has also promised to bring information on this matter soonest possible. Honorable Speaker, I would like to assure this August House that the Parliamentary Committee, the Departmental Committee on Lands appreciates the work that we undertake, and we are willing to dispense with all these matters before the long recess, that is on Thursday, December 3rd, 2020. Honorable Speaker, this is the commitment that we are giving to be able to deal with the 4 petitions that I've presented this afternoon. Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, I beg to move, and I request the Leader of Majority, the Honorable Kimunya, to second.
Leader of Majority.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to second the extension of time, and even as I do so, I really sympathize with the Committee on Lands, because they receive all manner of petitions, and everyone who has, and land is very sensitive, everyone who has attempted to resolve their land disputes, they've gone through the traditional courts, they've done through the traditional system, the courts, everywhere, they then end up in this committee. And I was Minister for Lands for, I think, 2.5 years or so, or 3 years. And I know the kind of things you get. So I sympathize with them, and I wish we could even give them much more time beyond the 60. But anyway, we are here to extend. And as members, we support this extension of time so they can at least try to process these petitions and give hope to the Kenyans in one way or the other. I beg to second.
I propose the question, which is that notwithstanding the provision standing under 227, subsection 2, relating to committal or petitions, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the public petitions specified hereunder by the Departmental Committee on Lands by a further period of 60 days with effect from 13th October 2020. 1. Public petition on irregular transfer of the ownership of Chense Ranch, presented by the Honorable Stephen Tayari, MP, on behalf of the petitioners. 2. Public petition on historical land injustices in Nandi County, submitted by the Governor of Nandi County on behalf of the petitioners. 3. Public petition on historical land injustices in Chepchabas area of Bomet and Kericho counties, presented by the Honorable Brighton Yegon, MP, on behalf of the petitioners. And 4. Public petition on usage of Gituamba land in Kenyona ward of Murang'a County, presented by the Honorable Sabina Chege, MP, on behalf of the petitioners. I put a question, which is that the procedural motion appearing as order number 10 in today's order paper be approved. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Those who are contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
Order number 11, procedural motion, extension of time for appointment of members to committees.
Chairman, select committee on selection, the Leader of Majority.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the following procedural motion, that noting the recent changes in the membership of the committees of the House and pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 265A, extension of period prescribed, this House resolves to extend the time for filling of the vacancies in the affected committees until 12th of November 2020. Honorable Speaker, members will note that you communicated changes affecting the Committee of Cohesion, and the Committee of Selection was supposed to then provide a replacement within 14 days. Now, we're still consulting with the whip, and I'm also aware that there are changes that were occasioned by the changes that we created earlier, when some people, for example, were appointed to chairman, yet they still held positions in committees, and they couldn't resign because we were not even anticipating they'll be elected chairman. So there's some cleaning up we need to do, and we would wish to take this time between now and the time we come back from recess for the two whips to clean up their committees. Then we will report a comprehensive list. And we've also received some requests from members who are serving in a committee they are uncomfortable with or they would want to shift, and all this can be done during these 2 weeks. So we are still seeking, the 2 weeks were triggered by the recent change we made, but we would want to, even as we feel that there's no point in filling one position and then have to come back and feel the others would like to do it more comprehensively. So that's basically why we're asking for this extra time. And we do hope by 12th of November we shall have finished this exercise and report it to the House. I beg to move and ask my whip, the Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe, to second.
Honorable Wangwe.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I do second the procedural motion that we seek for extension of time until 12th of November. Honorable Speaker, in addition to what the majority leader has explained, we also have a cadre of our colleague who did not manage to get a committee, and Honorable Speaker will also be considering such a colleague through the committee on selection. Therefore, the extension of this period is very much needed, and we will be requesting our colleagues to support this procedural motion. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I second.
Can I do this business? If you just take a seat. Even that one is not harmful. That's a seat for the Deputy Speaker. Honourable members, I propose the question, which is noting the recent changes in the membership of committees of the House and pursuant to provision of Standing Order number 256A relating to extension of period prescribed, this House resolves to extend the time for filling of the vacancies in the affected committees until 12th of November 2020. The desire of the House that put the question that noting the recent changes in the membership of committees of the House and pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 256A dealing with the extension of period prescribed, this House resolves to extend the time for filling of the vacancies in the affected committees until 12th of November 2020. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. Those of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Honourable members, before we go to the next business, just because there's a requirement placed on me, procedures changed. Just to notify that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 28, subsection 3, relating to calendar of the National Assembly, the Speaker notifies that upon the rise of the House today at the appointed time, regular sittings will resume on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020 at 2:30 p.m. What that means, honourable members, is that unlike in the past, the House will rise and the announcement will be made without question put, so that nobody may raise the issue that a question needed to be put. That was carried when you adopted the calendar. Next order.
Order number 12, motion, approval of agreement between the Government of the Republic of Kenya and the Government of the Italian Republic. Resumption of debate.
Honorable Muturi Kigano, you want to contribute to this?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I produced this agreement. We had time. You gave us time. And this is one of the best agreements that I have seen made by our government with other governments. Mr. Speaker, I noticed that there is an article that provides for interministerial committees for both governments to supervise and align policy for the operation of the government project. And then on top of that interministerial committee, I also noticed that Article 5 provides for a steering committee to execute, to supervise, composed of permanent secretaries of the respective governments, to execute, to supervise execution of the day-to-day project. This is like a board of governors in corporate world, and to be able to draw strategic day-to-day operations. And of most importance is that the agreement also provides for corporate social responsibility. Mr. Speaker, I know Gomen area, it is specifically provided under the agreement that this marginalized area, I think let me call it marginalized area of Magarini, will be provided, the operator of the projects will provide social amenities in respect of projects. It is for them to decide whether these projects will be channeled through the CDF and this will contribute immensely to the development of the resident of Gomeni as the people who strategically own and neighbor the project in question. So, Mr. Speaker, I support and thank the leader of majority for elaborating very well on Tuesday when this matter arose, and it was supported by Dr. Otiede, and they were able to enunciate the importance of this agreement. So I support.
Honourable members, when we adjourned this debate, it was purely for those who had not looked at the agreement because of some issues which were raised. But so I don't know whether members still want to. Let's hear the member for Funyula.
Honorable Speaker, thank you for this opportunity, and I stand to support the agreement, and thank you for giving us time to peruse in details so that we debunk some of the misinformation that had been peddled here or elsewhere outside there. Honorable Speaker, I think this is something that has been with us for many years, since 1962, and therefore it is something I would believe it's an upgrade or a continuity. And I do believe for all those years, it must have served the two parties well. That's why they have considered to renew the same. Coming from the name San Marco, Malindi Launching and Track Station is basically used for airspace, space science and the rest. Honorable Speaker, it provides quite a number of issues, interesting so to speak. The facility being a segment of the sea and part of the land in Gomeni area of Kilifi County. Two salient issues arise, Honorable Speaker, and sometimes, as we say, when the deal is too good, we must think twice. There must be some extra benefits the Italian government is gaining, probably more than we can see or we are able to appreciate. I do believe as we improve in our technology, as we improve on understanding of space science, we'll be able to see the intrinsic benefits the Italians are getting. Because it does not really explain very clearly why they would foot the day-to-day running operations. They would give the government of Kenya $250,000 every year, give the government of Kenya 50% of all the profits from commercial services, and give Kenya $50 for any financial authorization fee. That's why, as a government, as a country, we must continuously review what is basically happening there so that we leverage ourselves. We become also leaders in this particular aspect. The second issue that has drawn my attention is the mirrored or plethora of various governance structures. Honorable Speaker, there's the Joint Council of Ministers, there's Joint Steering Committee, there's the Joint Management Board, then of course there's the CEO, who is an Italian, there's the Deputy CEO, who is a Kenyan, and then there's provision to second as many Kenyans as possible with technical knowledge for capacity building and the rest. Honorable Speaker, I do find myself, unless there's justifiable reason, which does not seem to come out very clearly from the report of the committee on why we needed this such a convoluted and an expanded structure. Probably there could be reason, but for the benefit of doubt, since most of us don't understand probably bilateral issues, we will take it there must be a reason why that has been brought on board. However, Honorable Speaker, thirdly, there is a provision to bring development to Ngomeni area. The term of development is vague and unexplained. What constitutes development? I just pray and hope that the various arrangements given, for example, telemedicine, education and training, access to Earth observation and space science data, support to Kenyan Space Agency, and establishment of Regional Center for Earth Observation will somehow trickle down to the people of Kenya. But specifically, the question that we need to ask, and I do believe Honorable Baya raised the same, and many of us will raise the same, the extent, the quantum, the nature of developments to Ngomeni area is not clearly explained. It's left to the discretion of the Joint Management Board, is left to the discretion of the ministry, the Italian government, and some mandarins in the ministry. We do hope they will not shortchange the neighboring community. We do hope they will not give lip service to the neighboring community. But finally, Honorable Speaker, this is something that involves the people of Kenya. Those developments should cascade beyond Ngomeni and reach other people of Kenya, because you also see the space when you sit under the sun, under the moon at night. Honorable Speaker, with those few remarks, I support.
Well, as a House, you remain with the Oversight Authority. Nevertheless, I think that is provided for. Honorable Ishongwa.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and also rise to support this report, Honorable Speaker, by the Departmental Committee on Defense. And Honorable Speaker, looking at the agreement, and I must indeed thank you, Honorable Speaker, because your guidance on Tuesday was timely, and actually when I sought to raise on a point of order, I was actually seeking to your indulgence that you may allow the House members to be able to read and appreciate, because if you listen to the argument, when you listen to the leader of majority, it was quite clear that there was movement between the 1995 agreement and the 2016 agreement that is now before us. And Honorable Speaker, let me start by saying, first, this agreement, if you look at it, because now we have had the opportunity to read and understand the agreement, what was there in 1995 and what is there. One of the things I appreciate about this 2016 agreement, Honorable Speaker, is that just like any other lease agreement, because it's basically a lease agreement, they are leasing space and land and also space in the sea, is that when you lease, Honorable Speaker, even for your own rent or income businesses, agreements are not cast in stone. And therefore, when you enter into a 15-year agreement, it cannot be that the amount of money you pay will be fixed for 15 years. And you appreciate that this new agreement, the 2016 agreement, has a clause within the articles of the agreement. It allows even for the money that is payable to be reviewed every 5 years to the tune of $50,000 US, which is a good thing. Two, the agreement itself, unlike the 1995 agreement, is not cast in stone. There is a mid-term review that mid-term you can sit between the two governments, the Italian government and the government of Kenya, and be able to review the terms of this agreement. Therefore, some of the issues that were of concern to members in the 11th Parliament, Honorable Speaker, in a big way have been addressed by this new agreement. That if there are issues, for instance, the issues raised by Honorable Baya to do with development work in the area of Ngomeni and the surrounding areas, if there are things that the Italian government, because if you look at the agreement, Honorable Speaker, Article 8 stipulates the prerogatives and obligations of the Italian government, some of which include undertaking training programs for Kenyan nationals in aerospace science, space science, technology and research, to promote development projects for the community in Gomeni area. And such things, Honorable Speaker, are things that are measurable. We should be able, and I appreciate what you have just said in relation to what the member of Funyula was saying, that this House, and this is a challenge, I don't know whether the chair, but there are also members of the committee who are here, the Committee of Defense, is a challenge to members who sit in the Committee of Defense. It is upon this House, as the House that is charged with the oversight responsibility, to check. Don't wait for the midterm after 7 years. It may be too long. Check after a year or 2 years. Is the Italian government training Kenyans in aerospace science? Are they offering scholarships to our children to be able to study both here, and also enhancing capacity of our training institutions to be able to train Kenyans who will not only work in this space station but other space stations out of this country in other areas of the world where there are such similar stations. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, even on issues to do with compensation for land and the space being used, let us be able to review every 2 years, because circumstances change. Even the value of land and lease, the value that would be payable by the Italian government to the Kenyan government, with time will change as the Gomeni area and the surrounding areas change. And therefore, it will be imperative on the committee probably to have a schedule. And I heard our leader of majority emeritus, Honorable Duale, say that when they went there in the 10th Parliament, they were not allowed to access. We must reiterate that we have a responsibility and a right and a mandate bestowed on us by the Kenyan people as members of Parliament to be able to access any part of this country, even that site. The fact that it's being managed by foreigners doesn't mean, and I appreciate also that there is now a deputy CEO who is a Kenyan, and therefore they should be able to facilitate members of the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee to access the site, be able to review the terms, and be able to check whether some of the things, good things that have been improved in this agreement are being implemented, Honorable Speaker. And I want to support and indeed encourage the committee and this House to keep checking, and also Honorable Bayer and other members from the region in Kilifi, to keep checking that indeed many of the good things that have been enhanced in this agreement come to fruition and are of benefit to the Kenyan people. And I rise, therefore, Honorable Speaker, to support.
Yeah, of course, they could not have been allowed because of the agreement. The agreement subsisting then was the one of 1995. So they must have looked at strangers. Honorable Sotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this important motion. Mr. Speaker, I beg to differ with my colleagues who have supported this motion by, from the onset, saying I reject and oppose this motion. Mr. Speaker, you are aware that this matter was brought forth by the current governor of Vihiga, Honorable Dr. Utichiro, in the 11th Parliament. And there is a number of issues about the importance of this center to this country. And though this report has tried to deal with the issues that he raised, but I want to say that those issues have not been satisfactorily addressed in terms of value for money to Kenya. Mr. Speaker, this agreement is talking about only $250,000 that will be given.
Sorry, have you read it properly? Euros. Just look at it.
So, euros, sorry.
Many of you may not have looked at it. Yes, because I have read it myself. It is euros.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, is 250 euros, which will be paid to the Kenyan government every year. Mr. Speaker, this is very, very little money compared to the benefits that arise from this resource. Because this is a space center, a lot of activities happen around space center. We are talking about issues of weather monitoring. We are talking about issues of telecommunication. We are talking about issues of telemedicine and many other issues. Mr. Speaker, if all these issues were quantified, you find that Kenyan government is losing a lot of money that is not declared to it. And that's why Honorable Dr. Undo was questioning why they could easily give us 250,000 euros without much pressure. The other reason why I oppose, Mr. Speaker, is because the third-party agreements. I think that's where the devil is in the details. We need clarity on what is involved in third-party agreements. Because, Mr. Speaker, we know that satellite stations or space stations can also be rented to other countries, Chinese government and many others. So we need to know more, because this matter will touch on diplomatic relations with other strategic countries that this country engages in. So I think we need clarity around there. We also need clarity around the functions of this space center and the functions of the Regional Center for Resource Mapping for Development, which is in the Kasarani area. Which is which, and what are the functions of each? Because this treaty seems to give a lot of weight to this Malindi Center and not the center we have.
There's an intervention from member for Kilifi North. Yes.
Yes, Speaker, just to inform the member that probably he's read the agreement partially, that there is 50-50 sharing of all proceeds that come from all those other activities that come in, and the commercial activities. And there's also information that probably is leaving out on that there's almost 613,000 euros that will go to the Ngomeni community directly. So there are other things that I think the contributor is leaving out purposely for the purpose of really taking the position he's taking. But I think it's important he reads the whole agreement.
Proceed. We will hand you an extra 30 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, I have sufficiently read the agreement, and you remember in my contribution I said I think there is more to this thing in terms of what services are going to be provided and what is the revenue from those services. From my knowledge, I know a lot of revenue will arise from issues of weather management, sharing data on weather, issues of satellite data.
Give him an extra 1 minute.
Issues of telecommunication. And another very important thing is that this center deals with the issues of telecommunication. In this country, we're having an issue with the digital divide. We have some counties which are not covered digitally. What is this center going to do in terms of supporting this country in this area?
Certainly, Honorable Sots, you appear to be now irrelevant. Please, and I think honourable members, you know, you are assumed to have knowledge of certain things. You are looking at an agreement. An agreement involves two people. But the Constitution of this Republic, and you are lucky, the Honorable Tiedemolo is just sitting in front of you, provides that even if the national executive negotiates with other parties, that will never become binding until it is ratified by this House. So negotiations have happened. Now you are saying that you think no information. Now you know you should then go to the report of the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee to see when they met with the people who are involved in the negotiations, what information was given to them. But now, if you just look at the agreement and then start saying that this is not enough, this is what the information has not been given, where you are putting now, you say digital divide. Surely, you are not actually dealing with this report. Honorable Soti, you have your 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the guidance. Mr. Speaker, there was also concerns that were raised by the expert who was consulted, Professor Paul Back, who is from the Union Space Working Group. Some of the issues raised here seem not to have been captured in the agreement. Mr. Speaker, for those few remarks, because of time, I oppose.
Honorable Angwe, oh, it's not here.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support the report of the Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations on the proposed agreement between the Government of Italia and the Government of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, I'm supporting this report basically on mathematical movement, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, when the mathematical movement is positive, definitely, Honorable Speaker, it means all the indicators are in support of where it's moving positively. Honorable Speaker, there is a shift in the proposed agreement, Honorable Speaker, as follows. One, that there will be a benefit in terms of scholarships to the people of Kenya. 15 number, Honorable Speaker, each earning at a cost of 2.6 million shillings or 20,000 euros. Honorable Speaker, that in itself, compared to the agreement of 1995, is very positive. And that in itself, Honorable Speaker, supports the whole agreement. Honorable Speaker, there is a positive movement whereby we are going to get 6.4 million euros in terms of community projects against the 1995 agreement, Honorable Speaker, which was only speculative. It was not guaranteeing the exact figure of amount which is going to go to the community in terms of project support to the community. Honorable Speaker, my take on that is the leadership of the area, through this, who are representatives in this House, Honorable Speaker, let them be our eyes. Let them check what is happening on the ground, Honorable Speaker. And now that the agreement provides for midterm review, at the same time, Honorable Speaker, during the discussion in terms of the license by the government, it's giving 5 years in the same report, Honorable Speaker. This can be discussed, and the leadership from the area should be able to communicate to the House whether it is true the 6.5 million shillings is going to the ground in terms of the community or not. Therefore, there is a review, a window, Honorable Speaker, that after 5 years, they can review the license fees, and during that appraisal in terms of the license fees, we can be able now to hold the Italian government that they've not been able to honor the pledge that they promised in the agreement. Honorable Speaker, there is also a positive move whereby they are shifting from the 50,000 euros in terms of the license to 250,000 euros, Honorable Speaker. That is a huge percentage, Honorable Speaker, whether they are making profit or not, whether they are gaining or not, Honorable Speaker. In my opinion, I feel the movement being positive to that extent, it makes sense for me to support and get an earning from the government of Italy so that the people of Kenya, Honorable Speaker, can benefit from this organization in our country, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, with that in mind, I feel it's sufficient enough to support, and therefore I support.
Now, it's a point of order when the member has completed. What's a point of order? What do you mean? You know, I'm following the way you have put your account. Member for Makueni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on this very important matter, Mr. Speaker. It's been on the floor before, and definitely there is a lot of improvement from what we last discussed in the 11th Parliament and what is happening now. Mr. Speaker, I want to concentrate on corporate social responsibility, which was raised by the member for Kilifino of Honorable Mbaya. And wish to say that corporate social responsibility, when you have something of this nature, is very important. First of all, the Space Center is in Malindi, particularly because of the global positioning. And that was the best position for a space center to be able to do its work. And therefore, when it comes to corporate social responsibility, now that the agreement puts something plausible and substantial, it will be very important for the local community to benefit. The children who grow there, the children who see this space center from the time they are born, and if some of them have been influenced by its presence there to be able to be space experts in future, I think it would be a very good idea, and it will welcome so that they can get scholarships, they can study and they can come back and work at this space center, Mr. Speaker. So I think it be there is already a blessing to our country, owing to global positioning, and I believe as a House we need to support it for the benefit of the many Kenyans who come from that particular area. When it comes to the issue raised by Honorable Baya about public participation or engagement by the local county government, I believe Honorable Baya sufficiently represents the people of Kilifi in this House, together with his colleagues. And that's excuses my learned friend Governor King, who was my classmate, together with his team, so that when Honorable Baya is here, he can even report to us and we can work with him and make sure that the Space Center is useful to Kenyans. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I do support and I thank you for the opportunity to contribute on this very important matter. And through this House, Mr. Speaker, many Kenyans who are interested in space learning are now learning through the House. People who didn't get this information are now getting it through this broadcast. And I believe many Kenyans and many young people know that there is an opportunity and they can go to school and learn and become space experts in future. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, if you say you want to talk, member for Suba North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I know there are members who would like for the debate to end with good reason. But, Mr. Speaker, when we are dealing especially with issues to do with the treaties, they should usually indulge me because I'm the one who brought the Treaty Making and Ratification Act that has actually ensured that members actually debate treaties in the House, because the Constitution provides that all treaties that are made in the country become part of the laws of Kenya, but it did not give Parliament the mandate to then discuss. So I actually brought that law to ensure that Parliament is actually part of treaty making. And I'm glad, Mr. Speaker, because these are the reasons why I brought that act, so that when we are making very, very grievous, very serious decisions, that parliamentarians who are representatives of respective parts of the country are involved. And because of that matter, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I want to support, but with the reservations. Mr. Speaker, when you look at the report and even what the members are saying, there's a lot of focus on the issues of monetary benefit to the country. There's a lot of issues of support or benefit to the local community through CSR projects. But my own concern, Mr. Speaker, is that I'm not hearing us speaking very strongly to the issue of security, especially when you're talking about space and telecommunication, and especially even for when I listened to the former majority leader when he was talking about how the last committee in the last parliament was not allowed to access that center. I'm hoping that, Mr. Speaker, those are issues that have been dealt with. And also just to indicate, because I've seen a lot of times when we are dealing with treaties before the House, members don't realize that we have the same power as we have when passing other pieces of legislation. In this instance, we may not amend, but we can actually pass with reservations. And when we pass with reservations, it means we will have effectively amended the treaty, so that if there are parts of a treaty we are not agreed with, then we'll be telling the executive we are giving you the mandate to ratify, but with the reservations on this and that part. And what I've noticed is that most of the times when we debate as though we only have one option, which is to reject or accept. So otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I would have wished that we spoke more strongly to the issue of security. But also the other issue that I know it was not been canvassed, that people don't think it's very important, but from a power relation, I just wonder whether the committee or even address the issue of the naming, Luigi, Broglio, Malindi. Why wouldn't it be Malindi, so that the power is primarily Kenya, because it's actually situated in Kenya. Even naming has impact and importance. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, thank you, and I support with reservations. Thanks.
This intervention, member for Limuru.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I've been listening to most of the contributors, and going by what I'm hearing is that the points that are coming out are actually repetitive because they are mostly in support. And so I would wish at this point, Honorable Speaker, to move that the mover be now called upon to reply.
The only problem I have is that some members have never quite known when certain things are being said, you still want to dash. Even if you are taken short, if the speaker is about to be on his feet, you better sit and whatever it is that you can sort yourself later. You know, Mwadhiri claims that the mover be called upon to reply. With as many as that opinion say aye, as many as counter opinion say nay. The ayes have it. And I note that the nay came from the Honorable Dr. Nyikal, who, according to record, actually, even if you sat here the whole afternoon, because of what happened the other day, you could not get a chance. You lost your chance. You had a balance of 3 minutes. Where you are the first one I was supposed to agree on the chance. You are not in the chamber at that time. No, Honorable. The records are, you know, you cannot fault my memory, Honorable Nyikal. The record which was here, and it was from Hansand, was that when the debate was adjourned, the Honorable Nyikal was the one contributing, and he had a balance of 3 minutes. So when the debate was called, after being moved again, the first person I was looking for was the Honorable Dr. Nyikal. And I know I can't miss to see you if you're in the chamber. I know you are one of the most active members of this House, but on that particular day, at that time, you were not in the chamber. So you lost your balance, the balance of time you had. So it's unfortunate. Don't worry, Honorable Nyikal. I needed to have told you that quietly, you know. But it's the truth, it's factual. The Honorable Leader of Majority, you are doing it on behalf of the Chair.
Honorable Speaker, I want to thank the members for the contributions they made, starting from the 10th Parliament and the 11th Parliament, which set the basis for a renegotiation of an agreement that was otherwise skewed against Kenya and the locals, to something that is now a far much better agreement. It's probably not the best, as the Honorable Osotsi would like to see it. It may not address all the issues, but in terms of access to the facility, obviously the 1995 agreement did not have Parliament in mind. It was done before the 2010 Constitution. Now, the 2016 will, of necessity, because of the ratification, now bring in parliamentary oversight. And nobody can then tell Parliament you cannot access the facility because it's part of our constitutional duties. And nobody can restrict Parliament in terms of where they can access or not. So, again, this has gains that are coming in that we will now be able to do things far much better than before. The community will receive much in terms of the corporate social responsibility. Kenyans, about 180 Kenyans will be employed, and scholarships and training, capacity building. And in the end, we believe that there will be more benefits accruing from utilization of this center than before. Technology has also changed, and obviously some of the issues that I had Honorable Osotsi talking about in terms of the fiber connectivity has nothing to do with that space station. We already have the national fiber network connected through the other sea cables into the rest of the world. So, Honorable Speaker, I just wanted to respond to some of those misconceptions for the record and thank the rest of the membership for supporting this. And we do hope that everyone will vote in agreement so that we can at least close one chapter as we go home today with a new agreement ratified so that the people of Gomeni and the people of Kenya can realize the full benefits of this agreement. With those words, I beg to reply.
members, I put the question, which is that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations on its consideration of the agreement between the government of the Republic of Kenya and the government of the Italian Republic on the Luigi Broglio Malidi Space Center, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 26 June 2019, and pursuant to provisions of Section 8, Subsection 4 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act 2012, approves the agreement between the government of the Republic of Kenya and the government of the Italian Republic on the Luigi Broglio Malindi Space Center. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honourable members, before we proceed to order numbers 13 and 14, being a motion on the consideration of Senate amendments to the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission Amendment number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2019, and Committee of the Whole House on these Senate amendments respectively, I wish to guide the House on the procedure to be followed. You will recall that the National Assembly passed the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission Amendment number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2019, on 24th of September 2019. The bill seeks to amend the first schedule to the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission Act of 2011 to provide for the establishment of a selection panel to oversee the filling of vacant positions in the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission. Following its passage by the House, the bill was forwarded to the Senate for consideration, as it is a bill concerning county governments. Honourable members, the Senate made various amendments to the bill. The Senate amendments were committed to the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs of this House and are now awaiting consideration by the House. The amendments will be moved by the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs. The manner of disposing these amendments is provided for under Standing Orders 145 and 148. In summary, honourable members, the House will generally debate the Senate amendments for not more than 1 hour under the motion that the Senate amendments be now considered. Thereafter, should the House resolve to consider the amendments, the House will dissolve into Committee of the Whole House to dispose of the amendments sequentially. On the other hand, should the motion be negatived, the motion or should the Senate amendments be now considered, the provisions of Article 112 of the Constitution relating to a mediation process will apply. Similarly, should the Committee of the Whole House amend or reject any of the Senate amendments, the mediation process will again kick in. In conclusion, honourable members, should the House pass the Senate amendments as proposed by the Senate, I will then proceed to forward the bill to the President for assent in accordance with the provisions of Article 112 of the Constitution. The House is accordingly guided. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 13, motion. Consideration of Senate amendments to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, Amendment number 3, Bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2019.
Chairman, Justice and Legal Affairs Committee.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the guidance that you have given the House. Mr. Speaker, I beg, with that in mind, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the House amendments to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, Senate, yes, sorry, let me repeat it, that the Senate amendments to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Amendment number 3 Bill, being National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2019, be now considered. I beg to move and request my colleague, Honorable Otiede, the Vice Chair of the GILAC, to second.
Honorable Otiede Amolo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to second this motion. It is a simple, clear motion. Mr. Speaker, I urge members to support this amendments of Senate wholly, preferably without any sort of amendment, for the simple reason, Mr. Speaker, that if we go that way, then we will still be in danger of not having a properly constituted IEBC. First, Mr. Speaker, I second this motion because there's a lacuna in the law. The current law only provided for appointment of the current commissioners and no other. That is the only reason why so far we have been unable to fill the 4 vacancies that arise. Mr. Speaker, what the Senate did, which is reasonable in the opinion of the committee, was to reduce the very complex and elaborate process of appointing the appointing committee, which had 11 members, but which has now been reduced to 7. And of those 7, Mr. Speaker, 4 of them are to be appointed by the Parliamentary Service Commission, 2 of them by the Interreligious Council, and 1 by the Law Society of Kenya, which now makes it 7. The committee viewed that as quite reasonable, and it reduces the complexity. Mr. Speaker, we also note that the Senate decided to introduce qualifications of who can serve in the appointing panel, which is quite reasonable. Those qualifications requires you to be a citizen, it requires you to have integrity, and it requires you to at least have a degree. All that was reasonable in the view of the committee. Mr. Speaker, it is to be noted, and this is important for Parliament, that this process places the primacy of the appointment of commissioners in Parliament, because 4 of the 7 are actually appointed by the Parliamentary Service Commission. So Parliament has the greatest say in the appointment of the commissioners. And I dare say, Mr. Speaker, that if we adopted this and it was signed into law, there would be no reason why we would not immediately proceed and fill the 4 vacancies that currently exist in the IEBC. And if we were to do that, we would then have the space to address the very fundamental issue of how do we deal with the 3 existing commissioners, most of whom many people have expressed disquiet about. But we cannot deal with them until and unless we have a process of appointing others, because there cannot be an IEBC without commissioners. Mr. Speaker, I want to plead that in the context of the dangers that we face, in the context of having a general election in less than 2 years, in the context of all the initiatives that we are having in terms of amendment of the Constitution, the most stable institution that we require in this country is the IEBC. By simply adopting what we had already passed and Senate adjusted to a limited extent, we will have helped this country avert a very big danger. Right now, as we speak, if anything was to happen to any one of those commissioners, we would not have a commission, even capable of conducting the by-elections that we are facing. That is a grave danger to our country that we should not face. Mr. Speaker, I therefore urge honorable members to agree with us, despite any temptation we might have of adjusting 1 or 2 things. And I can tell you that even the committee was tempted to question the idea of why the LSK should be part of the 7. But we restrained ourselves, noting what the Speaker just indicated, that if you try to touch anything, then we go on mediation. And right now we are facing a recess, and then we lose a lot of time. And we resolved that whatever little danger or impropriety one could say that the Senate may have done, it's insignificant compared to what we need to seal, to the lacuna that we need to seal. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I beg to second this motion as presented. Thank you.
Allow me then to propose the question that the Senate amendment to the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission Amendment number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2019, be now considered. The first member with interest on my screen here is the Honorable Koskeki Mutai. Member for Chepalungu. Not desiring to be in the House. The next one, I see interest from the Honorable Amos Kimunya, Leader of Majority.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support that this House considers the amendments from the Senate. It's a custom, any bill affecting the counties would have to be sent to the Senate, and it's within their prerogative to prefer any amendments that they would want to bring. And when they then bring it to us, we look at, and if it's reasonable, we accept. If it's unreasonable, we go for mediation. And from the report of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee and our own interpretation, really there would only have been one issue I would have had an issue with. The fact that we are limiting the appointment to only the Law Society of Kenya. Which instead of opening to the wider profession. But if we were to even attempt to make an amendment to that, we'll then go to open another Pandora's box. Accountants would also want to come in, engineers would also want to come in, and we'll go back to the 11 or 18 people in the panel. So we will trust on this one that the Law Society of Kenya, especially after the tea and Mandazi session in Parliament, that the new leadership at LSK would not use this now, the opportunity to derail the process. And I'm sure the chair and the vice chair are senior members within our profession. So that is one of the issues that members had, that LSK wants to occupy Parliament, and we are now saying LSK to appoint somebody into the IEBC. They could actually jeopardize. But I know Honorable Milio Diambo is a seasoned member of that society, and Honorable Soipan. You know, we have so many members here who protect the leadership of LSK from wanting to sabotage the work of the House. So on that basis, on that understanding, I actually accepted that perhaps we don't even need to make that amendment. And hence I would urge the House that it's really a technical issue before us. We accept to debate the amendment, then we get in the committee of the whole House, we agree on those amendments, and we make progress so that at least we can, before we go home today, we can have cleared the way for other processes that affect IEBC, so that the credibility of that body can become clear in the eyes of the Kenyan people. So, Honorable Speaker, with those words, I beg to support and urge the House that let's move with speed, let's finish this matter, get into committee, and we dispose of it in as fast as possible. I beg to support.
The Honorable Leader, you seem to be of the position that the LSK will be protected on this floor on any day, even when it holds that the House, even what you're saying now, is an illegality. We would like to see, when we pass this one, whether the LSK will have will be able to follow up, but that is for another day. The Honorable Odege Mboya, member for Nyatike.
Honorable Speaker, allow me also to add my voice on the same and support the motion table before us by the committee. And listening to the mover and the seconder, let's not discipline an organization because of an individual. That's now the LSK. The institution is bigger than an individual and will continue being with them without that gentleman. So for me, I'm standing here to support, and I thank you for that.
The Honorable Odege, when the
the individual is the president of an institution, I think he's a spokesman for that institution. Then he speaks. The Honorable Mwati Mungai, member for Limuru.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this motion, given the fact that, and I listened to the seconder very clearly, that there could be danger that IEBC, for any reason that we don't anticipate, could be improperly constituted. And the fact that, Honorable Speaker, we are not very far off from another election, and we need to start putting our house in order. And I'm sure, Honorable Speaker, that there may be issues that are contained in the bill, but I think I want to concur with the mover that if we open, then it might spiral into mediation that shall never end. So, Honorable Speaker, I also urge my colleagues, let's support it so that progressively we can protect our institution. I thank you.
The Honorable Bara Akinye, member for Kabondo Kasipul.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I too join my colleagues to support. And I have noted that the critical issues have been captured in the qualification, the integrity, and also the fact that they must be citizens of Kenya. The second one is that 4 out of 7, really, if you have a majority in the appointing authority, it places the greatest amount of say to the parliament, and therefore I support. Thank you very much. Okay.
The Honorable Oundo Ojiambo, member for Funyola.
Honorable Speaker, thank you for this opportunity. On the onset, let me state I support the amendments from Senate, and because so, they are very difficult people to deal with, so to speak. Honorable Speaker, I have had an occasion to attend a mediation process, and I regretted why even I accepted the invitation to go there, because they are so inconsiderate in discussions. However, Honorable Speaker, it also shows that probably they are beating this particular House into submission with the insurgents and the difficult approach that we have to accept. But Honorable Speaker, at times, you have to accept to fight another day. The issue of IEBC is so critical to this country that any further delay puts this country in danger and jeopardy, because you never know what can happen that will necessitate an immediate election. IEBC, the way it is constituted, indeed is unconstitutional, and it has no capacity to execute its mandate in the event we have to go to a referendum in support of BBI, which is going to happen anyway. So on that score, Honorable Speaker, I support. But as I support, Honorable Speaker, we need to send a very clear message to LSK. I hope they will not extend the double speak. When it favors them, they gladly take up the position, but when they don't feel like, as they pursue certain agenda that is part of the current political dispensation, they come and say all those kind of things. Honorable Speaker, on that score I support, and I urge my colleagues to let it go and let us complete this process for the support of this country. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Odhiambo Akoth, member for Suba North.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
We might not know everything about the pandemic, but we do know a lot more than we did in March. And although we only know in part, we are better prepared today than we were in March this year.
The question that then comes to mind is,
What if the virus mutates? Every virus can mutate, that is, change. At best, a virus becomes weaker through mutation.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
None of us would have anticipated the spread of what started in Wuhan City. And we would never have anticipated that the virus would spread across the world and indeed was going to impact all of us.
Just like other countries in the world, Kenya has been experiencing massive destruction of the economy in terms of GDP decline and job losses.
First, we identified what were the immediate needs as developed by the ministries and the institutions that were at the forefront.